The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
We got ourselves a basketball tournament. Yes, we do. We got what they are saying is not a Cinderella story, but it is a Cinderella story with so many levels that you can sink your teeth into. Oakland, which is not in California, but is in Michigan, is now the story of the tournament. How far they go, we'll see. Will they be a story next weekend? Well, we'll find out tomorrow if they can get past NC State, but this is going to be fun to watch what happens with Oakland. Oh, and there were more upsets yesterday. 3 of the 11 seeds won, although I don't think any of those 3 have the impact of this. And the top seeds, they're still in pretty good shape, and we got another full day coming up today. This is just such a great 2-day period with 16 more games today. And by the time we get to the end of the weekend, we're down to 16 teams. But in the meantime, we get to soak in what is just a tremendous story from last night. And it's not just that Oakland pulled off the huge upset. The biggest upset of the day is a 14 seed beating a 3. It's the 3 that they beat. They beat the bluest of bloods in Kentucky. And they beat a program that 10 years ago seemingly had it figured out, that John Calipari was loading up on all these one-and-done freshmen. He was promising them, come to Kentucky, I will make you into a lottery pick, you will make a lot of money. In the meantime, you may win me a national championship. He won one along the way. He has been to multiple Final Fours. He has kept the program near the top, and he has made an awful lot of money. And it's going to take an awful lot of money if they want to run him out, because he hasn't had much success recently. He's only won one tournament game over the last 5 years. And last night, against a program that was Division II, and this is not just the program itself, but the people behind it. Greg Campy is the coach. He's been there for 40 years. He's been there so long that Oakland was Division II when he started there. And at 68, he wants to keep going. 40 years in one place. I mean, that just doesn't happen. You're probably talking about maybe 2 or 3 guys in the history of college basketball. I have to look this up. Maybe Adolph Rupp was 40 years at Kentucky. John Wooden wasn't 40 years at UCLA. Maybe Ray Meyer, I think he started the program at DePaul, might have been there for 40 years, but it's highly unusual for someone to stay in one place for as long as he did. And here's what you look at. This is one of the most stark differences when you look at a game like this. The salary for Greg Campy, who's, again, been on the job for 40 years. So, okay, there's some job security there. But he's making $329,000. That's a lot of money. That's a damn good salary. But John Calipari's salary is $8.5 million. Not only that, Campy has a contract that says his bonuses cannot be more than 19.9% of his base salary. So if they want to give him a big fat bonus for earning an extra $1 million for winning last night, each time you advance in a tournament round, that's about what it's worth to the school. That's all they can give him according to his contract. And if you look at the amount of money that the program spends on basketball, $2.3 million. You know what Kentucky spends on basketball? $23 million. So a tenth of the budget for basketball at Oakland that Kentucky has. And the assistant coaches on Kentucky are doing better than Greg Campy. Orlando Antigua makes $900,000 and will get a $400,000 retention payment if he completes his 3-year contract on June the 30th. And they got 2 other assistants making more. One of them $600,000, another $350,000. I mean, it's a different universe of basketball here. And we'll get in the 10 o'clock hour to the Calipari future. It's going to cost a lot of money if they want to get rid of him, close to $35 million. Not that the Kentucky Boosters don't have it, but the question is, do you want to do that to a Hall of Fame coach who's led you to great success in recent years and, may be adaptable enough to come up with a new system, which is probably going to have to happen because the one and done, while it may be successful in getting you to the tournament, when you get to this point, you need some experience. You need to play defense, which Kentucky had a difficult time last night, particularly defending the three. There's a player, and this is all part of the tournament as well. When a player emerges who you've never heard of and has his 15 minutes of fame, sometimes that's it. That the first weekend is what you get with this guy, and he just goes down in the annals of the NCAA tournament as one of those unsung heroes, because in most cases they don't wind up in the NBA. Examples: Lorenzo Charles, who had the great dunk against Houston in 1983 to complete the upset that NC State pulled off. He wound up dying in a bus crash. Years later, he was driving a bus, and the bus crashed, and he died. Harold Jensen, who was just a player on Villanova coming off the bench. He had 14 points in that enormous upset of Georgetown, 1985. Remember Tyus Edney of UCLA? Now, UCLA is a blue blood program, but Tyus Edney going the length of the floor in the final seconds to put in the layup to beat Missouri, which was on its way to an upset, and that UCLA team went on to win the national championship. Bryce Drew, son of the coach, Valpo, 1998. 2 seconds left on the clock, inbound pass, hits a half-court shot. Remember him? I think he played briefly in the NBA. Harold the Show Arsenault for Weber State and their upset of North Carolina, 1999. Kevin Pittsnoggle, the heavily tattooed center from West Virginia, as they made it to the Elite Eight in 2005. Remember Ali Faroukmanesh from 2010, Northern Iowa? They beat number 1 Kansas that year. And then Luke May, who is the older brother of Drake May, who may or may not wind up here as a quarterback, in NC State's win over top-ranked Kentucky in 2017, he hit the winning shot. So there are guys like this, and in some cases it's the winning shot, and sometimes it's the winning performance, as it was with Jack Gelke last night. And we'll get to his story. But first, the story of the coach. And Greg Kampe is such a wonderful story. In that I don't know whether he had opportunities to leave. I don't know, whether he just flew under the radar all these years, or whether he felt like this is the place I need to be. I don't want to look anyplace else, whether he turned down any inquiries. But he's got a great reputation as a coach. As a matter of fact, is friends with John Calipari. In fact, they were talking as the brackets were being put together, and one of them said, wouldn't it be something if we played each other? And it was kind of a wink-wink. And, yeah, they did wind up playing each other last night, and Kampe's team knocked off the blue blood.
I got asked this a couple days ago. You don't blow anybody out. You don't, you won a championship, but your numbers are you're in the middle of the pack and everything, and we just win close games. We've done it all year. We lost a very close one to Ohio State and a very close one to Illinois. We learned from those games. When we beat Xavier in a close game, we knew we were a special team, and we just have different ways to beat you. But our zone is, man, it's good, and we defend. That's so much different for me. I've always been a coach that won games with offense, and this year it's all been defense, and great players making plays down the stretch, and we've just win close games. And if you would have been in our huddles the last 7-8 minutes of the game, we said if we're ahead with the 6 minutes to go in the game, we will win. And they believed that, and they did, because they've done it all year. We win close games. We make plays. Trey with a fadeaway jump shot. DQ Cole with a shot in the corner when it looked like all hell was breaking loose, right? We had a 7-point lead, and all of a sudden it's 2, and we're in a panic. The shot clock's running down, and Rocket gave it up. Rocket Watts gave it up, and DQ buried it. We just do those things, and that's how you win, and we won.
And they did. They did. 80-76 over Kentucky. 3 seed goes out. 14 seed moves on, and they will be playing North Carolina State tomorrow. Now, the hero, the guy who got it done for them was Jack Gelke, who was red hot in the first half, knocking down 3 after 3 after 3. And as Kampe was going off the floor at halftime, where they do that, that little interview that they do, two questions or so, Yes. So what's your plan for the second half? And he says, tell Gelke to keep shooting. Just keep shooting, which he did. And he knocked down 10 3-pointers, which only 2 other players in the history of the NCAA tournament have done. And the 10 threes were one off the single-game record set in 1990 by Jeff Fryer. I don't remember Jeff Fryer too well, but Gelke takes his place alongside him. But here's the story, and this is really the most interesting part of the whole thing that happened last night, is that Jack Gelke, you think, oh, wow, has he been hidden all these years at Oakland? Really great shooter. They just haven't been in the tournament. We haven't paid attention. No. He played 5 years, including a redshirt year, so didn't take the court 1 year, but was at Division II Hillsdale College 5 years. And he was asked, were you overlooked? No, he wasn't overlooked. He said, I wasn't that good. And if you look at his numbers when he played there for 5 years, he's from Wisconsin, and he was there for 5 seasons, and he was okay. He didn't average a whole lot of points. He let's see, his numbers. I had his numbers here a second ago, but his 1 year at Oakland, the one season he spent there this year, he hit 121 of 327 3-pointers, which is pretty much all he did was to shoot 3-pointers. His whole time at Hillsdale, he was 184 for 482. So in other words, in 4 seasons being on the floor, Gelke shot 482 threes. In 1 season for Oakland, he shot 327. And, he really wasn't a big-time shooter at Hillsdale. He averaged 1.8 made 3-pointers per game and shot 38% from beyond the arc. And last night he comes up with a career-high 32 points, knocking down 10 of 20 from beyond the arc. The 2 points came on a foul that he was fouled, and he hit 2 of 3 free throws after a 3-point attempt. Just a remarkable night and a remarkable story for a guy who says, hey, don't call us Cinderella.
We weren't trying to talk anything disrespectful at all during the week. We were just trying to say that we believed we belonged here as well. And like you said, we proved it, and we've been a solid team all year. We've won close games, like Coach said, and we just believe in each other as teammates that we're always going to make the next play because things are going to go wrong, but we know we're going to make the next one.
So for however long it lasts, Jack Gelke joins the lore of Bryce Drew and Harold Deshaw Arsenault and Kevin Pittsnoggle and Ali Farouk Manesh.
I don't care too much about that. I just I don't know. I want to be a bigger celebrity after our team wins the next game. That's really all I'm thinking about is tomorrow our prep for either NC State or Texas Tech, and we're going to go out there and we're going to win again.
Yeah, well, that's going to be NC State, which I thought might be out of gas after their run last week. I guess they had since Saturday to rest, but they had to win 5 games in 5 days here at Capital One Arena last week, including knocking off top seed North Carolina in the final. And they go out and they take care of business last night. I did not watch the game, but NC State wound up winning by 13, 80-67. So that's the matchup tomorrow. Oakland, a 14 seed, and NC State, an 11 seed. Also from late last night, and I saw the highlight or low light, depending on how you want to look at it, Kansas got a real scare from Samford. Not Stanford, but Samford. 4-13. Now, Kansas is playing with a lot of injuries, and I don't give them a lot of hope against Gonzaga tomorrow, but we'll see. But there was a play at the end of the game where A.J. Stanton-McCray attempted to block a dunk by Kansas guard Nick Timberlake, and it looked like a clean block, but they called it a foul, and Kansas was able to hold on to win 93-89. Samford was down 22 points in this game. I mean, if you looked at the early score, thought, you're not going to stay up for this. Might as well go to bed. Well, it turned out to be a really close finish. And, there's dancing and moonwalking by Bill Self about whether or not there should have been a foul call. Self, the Kansas coach, he says, I thought Nick attacked the basket well. He's a much better athlete than what a whole lot of people think. He attacked it strong like he should. He did not answer the question, did you think it was a clean block? Samford using the three-pointer, and this is the game today. This is, if you're down 22, you can come back with this. So they finished with 16 three-pointers, which was 10 more than Kansas. So they took advantage of the three to get back in the game, just couldn't complete it, and that would have been an enormous upset. Not as big as what Oakland did, but almost as big with Samford making it a game. So Kansas survives in advance, and they will play Gonzaga tomorrow. The other upsets, I think, you might look at Duquesne, because Duquesne was playing in the tournament for the first time since 1977. They hadn't won a tournament game since 1969, and they beat BYU 71-67. Maybe helped by the shoes. Must be the shoes money. LeBron James, who played for their outgoing coach, his name is Keith Dambrot. He's my age. He's retiring at the end of the season, but he was LeBron's coach when he was in high school at St. Mary's St. Vincent High School in Ohio. So LeBron sent a shipment of new Nike shoes into the locker room, and maybe they played a role as Duquesne advances, winning 71-67. They will have to play Illinois, which got a kind of an early scare from Morehead State. Morehead State was very close in the first half, but Illinois was able to pull away and win 85-69. So Duquesne will try to keep it rolling tomorrow, but I don't know about their chances in that game. And then Oregon, to me, Oregon beating South Carolina, that is an 11-6. I don't know how big that is. Oregon is a big-time program with a big budget. South Carolina, the same thing. Maybe Oregon was underseeded because of the regular season record or whatever, but they're going to have a chance to prove themselves against Creighton, who some people like to get to the Final Four. And then Texas took care of Colorado State. By the way, Colorado State, Virginia got all that crap for scoring only 14 points in the first half against Colorado State in the play-in game on, was that Wednesday or Tuesday? Colorado State had 11 in the first half. They had 33 in the second half to make it look a little better, but Texas holds on to win that one 56-44, and Tennessee had no problem with St. Peter's. St. Peter's last couple of years, the big Cinderella story, getting to the Elite Eight. They were knocked out by Tennessee last night rather easily, 83-49. All right, coming up in the next hour, John Calipari. What's his future after last night's shocking loss to number 14 seed Oakland? And it was 35 years ago today that the most powerful man in sports said, "That's enough, I'm retiring." We'll talk about that and more in the next hour. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. All right, here we go. Day number 2. Did you get any work done yesterday in the afternoon? Some really good games. And late last night, yes, I was asleep at the time, but this was incredible. Samford, not Stanford, but Samford almost took down Kansas. Now, Kansas has got a lot of injuries. They're hurt, and I don't think they're going to survive tomorrow against Gonzaga. I don't see them getting to the Sweet 16, although this is not really your father's Gonzaga. It's not classic year for them, but they were good enough to beat McNeese by 20 points yesterday, and I think they're going to take out Kansas in the next round. But there was a very controversial call at the end of the game. What looked like a clean block was called a foul, and it allowed Kansas to hang on and win 93-89. There were upsets, and there were 3 11 seeds that moved on. You know, you always have to pick a 12-5, and a lot of people like what could happen late tonight with James Madison at 12 taking on Wisconsin. But we did not have that yesterday. What we had were 3 11 seeds moving on. One of them, Oregon over South Carolina. I don't consider that to be a big deal. Those are programs the same size, really. And we had North Carolina State beating Texas Tech. Those are 2 similar programs in size. The only thing I would say about NC State is that what they had to do to get there and winning 5 games in 5 days in the ACC tournament, of course, you had time to rest, and these are, guys generally in their low 20s to teens, so they were ready to go, and they didn't really have that much of a problem with Texas Tech last night, winning 80-67. The Duquesne one raises a lot of eyebrows. They beat BYU and beat them 71-67. Really good game, back and forth. This was really a terrific game to watch, and good for them. They outfitted with new shoes before the game, by LeBron James. LeBron James had played for their coach, Keith Dambrot, when he was at St. Mary's St. Vincent's back in Ohio 20 years ago. So he wanted to reward his coach for moving on, and maybe it was the shoes money that helped them to win their first NCAA tournament game since 1969. 1969. Last time they'd been in it, 1977, when Norm Nixon was the star of the team. So of the three 11-6 upsets, I think that one is the most significant. They have to play Illinois tomorrow. Illinois didn't have much trouble with Morehead State, winning 85-69. But the game of the day yesterday was the game between Kentucky and Oakland. Oakland is not in Oakland. Oakland is about, 45 minutes north of Detroit. And it's a program that's been around for a long time. You see them play a pretty ambitious schedule. I think Maryland has played them early in the season before. But they're not, on the radar of teams that can do much in the NCAA tournament if they get there. And their story is just incredible. The coach has been there for 40 years. His name is Greg Campy. He makes $329,000 a year. John Calipari makes $8.5 million a year. The recruiting budget, or the basketball budget for the school, Oakland, is $2.3 million a year. It's $23 million a year for Kentucky. These programs are on different planets. And the star last night for Oakland was a kid. Now, he's a grown man now because he spent 5 years playing Division II basketball at Hillsdale College. Really wasn't that great of a three-point shooter. Has come to Oakland and is unbelievable. And last night, he had a career night. He hit 10 three-pointers, finished with 32 points as Oakland was able to win the game 80-76. We went through the story of the Oakland program at 9. Let's now look at Kentucky as the heat now gets turned up on John Calipari, because they are now 1-4 in their last 5 NCAA tournament games. This is a program that should be making the Final Four on a regular basis and winning national championships fairly often, once every 5, 6, 7 years. And Calipari is paid at that level to do that, $8.5 million a year. Plus, if they want to get rid of him, it's a $34 million buyout. We'll get to that in a second. This was Calipari after the game. He's very slick in all of his media appearances. He handles himself very, very well. I've interviewed him a couple of times over the years. Maybe 15 to 20 years ago, he was getting heat for cheating. Gary Williams didn't name him, but intimated that he was cheating to get his one-and-done guys. And Bobby Knight flat out came out and said, oh, yeah, Calipari's a cheater. And instead of Calipari pushing back, he says, oh, I have so much respect for Bob Knight. He knows how to play the game. Very smooth. So last night, he's watching his freshman not defend the three, watching this guy who they say looks like a high school science teacher, Jack Gilkey, hit 3 after 3 after 3. And his team isn't able to keep up. They were among the worst teams in college basketball this year defending the three, because when you take these high school superstars, these guys who are supposed to be one and done, they're not used to playing a lot of defense. And if they need to play defense in a high school game, they can't. So when they get to the college level, it takes a while. And here's a team in Oakland where if you don't play defense, you don't play, because that's the kind of program they are. They don't send guys to the NBA. That's not what they're about. But they're an experienced group. They know how to play the game, and they got to crunch time, hit the big shots, and were able to hold off the third-seeded Wildcats 80-76. Here's Calipari.
You go through this, and I've been the ups and downs of this sport. But this one, I'm really hurting for them, because there's other years your team, you max out and you lose a game and you're like, geez, this team I really felt could have done so much more. And our fans were here again. I feel bad for our fans. Wish, we would have played a little bit better, but it's hard when I look at this and I go, this season, these guys got so much better. We're so good to each other. It's celebrated. To define their season and our season with this game it's the sport we're in. It's it's what we do. But that's what I'm disappointed for them, because they deserve this. The preparation, I thought they were great. I thought the spirit was great. I thought we tried to keep it light. But this is this tournament, this kind of stuff. And this one hit me hard for them. Because, again, I just thought I had a team that could do some stuff.
Well, they could have, perhaps, had they gotten past this, but the inexperience really showed last night. 15 players on the Kentucky roster. 8 were freshmen, 3 were sophomore. Oakland had 1 freshman and a pair of redshirt freshmen. 5 of their players were either seniors or graduate transfers, as is the case in Gelke, Jack Gelke, who hit the shots last night. Going into 2022, Kentucky was 19-0 against 14 seeds or lower in the tournament, 0-2 last couple of years, including the 2022 loss to number 15 St. Peter's. Wildcats 13.5-point favorites last night. So what do we make of this? This was CBS last night after the game. Jay Wright, former coach at Villanova, has won national championships there. Seth Davis, covering the sport forever. The issue with this kind of program at Kentucky in this day and age.
I'm going to look at this definitely as a coach. Freshmen struggle understanding concepts defensively and the importance of defense. Antonio Reeves is the senior on that team. He's their leading scorer. He had 27 points tonight. The freshmen all struggled. But Antonio Reeves is also the best defensive player on Kentucky's team. All year, John Calipari, you could argue, has done a great job getting these young freshmen as far as they have. The game is different now. Oakland is older, mature, well-coached, disciplined players. They're 23, 24 years old. He's playing with 18-year-olds. It shows in these type of environments. We're watching Golke come off these screens. Robert Dillingham is 5 feet from him, trailing him. A good defensive player is on his outside shoulder, forcing him inside the three-point line, not letting him catch. It's been a problem for Kentucky all year. Being matched up against one of the best three-point shooters in the history of college basketball was not a good matchup.
Look, all credit to Oakland, what Golke did. He's a part of NCAA tournament lore.
For sure.
Forever for what he did tonight. Defensively, this is who Kentucky has been all season long. They're 111th on KenPom in defensive efficiency. They're 105th in the country in three-point defense. It's not that you can't beat good teams this way, just by being a good offensive team. But to be able to win and go deep and go to a Final Four, no national championship team has been remotely that bad on the defensive end. And then offensively, let's be honest, for these freshmen, especially Reed Shepard and DJ Wagner, the moment was too big for them. And we've seen this so often throughout the years in college basketball. These freshmen who come along over the course of the season have great games, big moments. They get here, where when you lose, your season is over. The two of them combined for 3 points, 1 for 10. Reed Shepard just shrank for the moment. He's a phenomenal kid. He's carried this team all season long. The moment was too big for them, and they played a good team that took advantage.
So that's Jay Wright and Seth Davis on the most shocking upset of yesterday, Oakland getting by Kentucky. And if you're John Calipari, and Calipari's, I believe, in his 60s now. If he's not, he's close to it. And does he change the way he's been doing things, or does he bow out now? Kentucky may be willing to buy him out, even if it is $35 million to do it, close to that. Or does he say, okay, I'm looking around college basketball. What I was doing 7-8 years ago is not working anymore. I can't get these guys in. Because here's another problem with the basis of the program. If you're constantly recruiting the top freshmen, you got to play them. You can't tell them, oh, yeah, we're going to have you compete against some guy who played 4 years at another program, is maybe 23, 24 years old, and knows how to play the game better than you do, and he's going to school you with some of the tricks he's learned along the way, and you may have to sit the bench. So if you're going to recruit these guys, you got to put them on the floor. If you put them on the floor, you're subject to what you just heard Jay Wright and Seth Davis discussing there. They're freshmen. They're not ready for the moment. And the moment just gets bigger and bigger as you get to the NCAA tournament. Yeah, they had a good enough record to be a 3 seed in the tournament, but you just can't sustain this. And again, look at what Kentucky has done in recent years, 1-4 in the tournament. Kentucky can't be going home after the opening game. You have to at least see them in the Sweet 16 every year and often in the Final Four. And they're just not doing that. And I don't know how you say to freshmen, top freshmen, hey, I know you're one of the top recruits in the country, but we're going to bring you in to Kentucky. And we're bringing in a few other guys, and they got a lot of experience, and they'll be ready to play right away. So you're going to have to sit the bench for maybe half the season. And by the time you're ready, we'll put you in. I mean, that's an ideal world, but you're just not going to get guys to buy into that. That's just not going to happen. The NIL money, yeah, I guess Kentucky can pay more than any place else. But the basis of the program, the backbone of the program, has been freshmen. You got 8 freshmen on that team, and that's double-edged. That's great players coming to a great program with an opportunity to show their stuff and get to the NBA. There's also the downside of that in that they're not ready for this, and here comes some guy named Gelke, who's never going to play, professional basketball unless he, gets a shot in Europe. But I don't know if he's even quick enough to get a shot off there against guys who are going to be lottery picks. And they schooled him. They beat him last night and were bigger in the bigger moments. Kentucky shot almost as many threes. I think Oakland shot like 31. Kentucky shot 28 of them. They just didn't make them. And Oakland had a guy who was knocking them down. They got some big threes at the end of the game from a couple of other players. And it's going to be a great second-round matchup. North Carolina State. And I love they got a big center there, 275 pounds. Love the way he plays, and love the way Oakland plays. And one of those teams is going to be in the Sweet 16, either an 11 or a 14. And that's what this time of year is all about. Ironically, and I find this to be ironic, Gonzaga coach Mark Few was not happy with his team playing in Salt Lake City, and they advanced without too much problem. They got by McNeese 86-65, so they won the game by 21 points, and they're going to match up against Kansas in the next round, which barely survived. But while his team is playing in this first game, while Gonzaga is beating McNeese, and it's close for a while, Few gets a little enraged because they're showing this Oakland upset on the big screen, and the fans are all into it. And he says, I appreciate you saying, that this is all part of March Madness. I just thought, I guess it's protocol. We don't need that. It's the NCAA tournament. These kids are involved. It's the biggest game of their lives. Those officials, it's a big moment for them. Everybody needs to enjoy the game at hand. It doesn't need to be like the Few House where we're flipping channels every 15 seconds and not watching the show we're supposed to be watching. Yes, but that's part of the allure of this tournament. This is why I think expanding the football playoff is not going to be nearly as good as what we have here with March Madness. I think they're trying to draw those parallels. Hey, it's going to be just like that. No, they're individual games, and when they get out of hand, you can't switch to another game. So even on the site, they were doing that last night in Salt Lake City, and Mark Few, who's a big part of what March Madness has become, getting Gonzaga to be a program that can compete with the big boys every year, a small school like that. And, here they were at the Delta Center, and they got the Gonzaga game going on. And at one point, McNeese's Christian Shoemate was lining up to shoot a free throw when an explosion of cheers broke out because Oakland's Trey Townsend had a steal. And anytime Kentucky made a mistake or Oakland did something to hold on to its lead, the crowd got loud. Here we go, Oakland, here we go. That's what they wanted to see. And, of course, everybody roots for the underdog. And Few said, I think this needs to change. It was impacting the game. I mean, the McNeese people were there to watch McNeese. Gonzaga people were there to watch Gonzaga. It's the NCAA tournament. If you can't get entertained, then get out and let somebody else in your seat, plain and simple. Oh, come on, Mark. Come on. Don't be a spoiled sport. That's March Madness, So they were showing it back in the day. And I guess they don't have, you can watch it on your phone. I guess some of the crowd could have been watching on their phone. But there was a famous night when the Redskins played the New York Giants in a big NFC East game on the same night, 1986, same night that the Mets were playing the Red Sox in Game 7 of the World Series. It was supposed to have been the day before on a Sunday, but it was rained out. So they played Monday night in Game 7, and the Giants were playing the Redskins in the Meadowlands. And in those days, we're going back, 30, almost 40 years now, 38 years, people had Watchmen TV sets. So they were watching the television at the Giants game. The Mets win the World Series. And Jay Schrader was the quarterback of the Redskins, and he's at the line, and he's calling out the signals, and he hears this enormous cheer go through the Meadowlands, through the football stadium, and he can't figure it out. He gets befuddled, and I think they had a turnover on the play, and he said, I just wasn't expecting to hear that cheer. Well, even almost 40 years ago, there was multitasking, and Mark Few in 2024, I don't think really can fetch about having the Oakland Kentucky game shown on the big screen, because that was the biggest thing that happened last night in college basketball, and this is all part of what has made this the tournament that it is, that you have all these great options. And I love the years ago when they CBS would only take you where they wanted to take you. Now when you look on the top of the screen and they got the scores and time of the other games, and if you're bored with what's going on, you can flip over. It's great. You don't appreciate that if you haven't lived through the days of being at the mercy of CBS to switch you. This is just nirvana, that you're your own control person switching from game to game to game. And I wonder if they're actually going to. I like the Red Zone channel, but I know you can do that with the Sunday Ticket. You have the ability to do that, but maybe that'll be the norm for the NFL going forward as well. Who knows? Larry David showing up on the Rich Eisen show yesterday, kvetching about rules and rules he'd like to see changed. We'll get to that next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Can John Calipari reinvent himself after what's happened to the Kentucky program? Not doing so well on the one-and-dones anymore. Knocked out last night in the biggest upset of the tournament. We'll get into that in the next hour. Meantime, it's over for Dan Monson at Long Beach State. Great story. He gets fired a week ago Monday, and then wins his conference tournament, gets into the NCAAs, and, he becomes an enormous story. Everybody's talking to him and he compared it to being like George Costanza, being fired and still showing up for work, acting like nothing happened. And, this could have been a great Cinderella story. They get in as a 15 seed, and that means they have to play a 2 seed. That's Arizona. A lot of people like Arizona to get to the Final Four. And, they put up a fight for a little while, but Arizona won the game by 20, 85-65. And Munson has been very gracious in all this. He's saying how lucky he was to have the 17-year ride that he had. He loved working with the players that he had, and he's indicating he wants to coach again. But the guy who fired him, what a complete dope. His name is Bobby Smitherin. He took the job in August, and this happens all the time in my business, that a new program director or general manager comes into the radio station, and he or she listens to a show that's been successful for a long time. Maybe it's not number one, but he or she decides, oh, yeah, I got a better alternative. And so they get rid of him. And he could have gotten rid of Monson even after they made the tournament this year. If he let him go after 17 years, well, okay, that happens. Long-term success, not where they want it to be. But instead, this guy Smitherin fired him before the conference tournament. Now, I guess he gave Monson the option of leaving right away, having the assistant coach take over, and Monson could leave, but he wanted to continue with those players, finish what he started, so he did coach the conference tournament, which they won. So now, listen to this dope Smitherin, who's trying to cover his tracks in the stupidity of all this, not waiting until the tournament was over, but instead firing him before the conference tournament. Smitherin spoke to the Associated Press, and he said, "My belief and hope is that by doing what I did and the timing of it, they would play inspired, and that's what they did. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it worked." What a bozo. What a complete slime ball. My God, that you thought it was going to work out this way? Come on. You embarrassed a man who ran your program for 17 years? You made him stand up in front of his players and say, I'm sorry, guys, I've been fired, but let's do what we can in this tournament. And they rallied around him, and you thought it was going to work out that way? I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it worked. Oh, my God. My belief and hope is that doing what I did and the timing of it, they would play inspired, and that's what they did. Please, you did not think this out. You wanted to get rid of him because you were new. You came in August. It was too late to make a change. So you sat through the season. Season didn't go exactly like you wanted it to. You didn't think they had any chance to win the conference tournament. So, get him out the door as quick as you can so you can start looking for a new coach. That's the motivation there. He actually wanted him to walk away. But no, I thought it would inspire the team. What in the history of sports, what owner, general manager, athletic director has ever fired a coach with the expectation that will motivate the team? Oh, my God. What a complete imbecile. And mark my words, whoever this dope hires to run Long Beach State, he's going to win 5 or 6 games the next year. This is ridiculous. Just absolutely. Dan Munson comes out of this looking really, really good. Really, really good on this. Larry David shows up on the Rich Eisen show yesterday. It's one of the advantages Eisen has of doing his show in Los Angeles. These kind of people can wander in the studio. And apparently Larry likes to hang out with Rich. He's done this a few times over the years. Curb Your Enthusiasm. They're about a little more than halfway through their final season, so maybe he's wanting to promote the show a little bit. But he came in and was, of course, complaining about the tournament. Why not? He says, this tournament, how much can I follow in sports? I'm supposed to know who's on Drake? I mean, this is crazy. Valparaiso? I know names on Valparaiso? This is insane. I don't know anything. Maybe I'll watch the semifinal, but that's it. What can I do? I got the Rangers. I got the Knicks. I can't follow these teams. How do people do it? How do they do it? He said, well, we really don't. We just, follow the brackets, the office pool bracket. And then he talked about exactly what we were just, discussing, Dan Monson, the Long Beach State thing. And Monson said in his pregame news conference the other day that he was like Costanza, showing up for work after he had been fired. And Larry said that's actually what he did when he was working for Saturday Night Live. He quit the show and then came back Monday morning and pretended it never happened. That was my neighbor Kramer's idea, the real Kramer. By the way, the character Kramer on Seinfeld was named for Larry David's neighbor. He says, you know what? I thought it could work. I thought it was a great idea. I thought I had nothing to lose. And he said, and this was prior to last night's game, he says, good for him. Where is Long Beach State? That's a college? There's so many. How can there be so many athletes? How can you have so many people play these games? Look at all these colleges and high schools. They all have teams. Let's go to the colleges. Are there really good people playing on these teams? How could there be so many great players? Larry's great. And he also had suggestions for changing rules, including kicking rules, that he has gone so far as to talk to Dwayne Johnson, who's the commissioner of the new UFL, the Spring League, which is due to start next week.
So, this, what is it called, the UFL?
Yes, sir.
That's starting up.
Yes.
And you know how I feel about the goalposts, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you made it very apparent here last time, and I even told you that when you said that the goalpost should be removed and that people like, say, the kicker on the Ravens shouldn't be able to handle his business as well as he does and affect games, I told you Justin Tucker actually heard that information.
Yeah, well.
And so where, do we have an update on this situation?
I have a little update.
Okay.
Because I'm still obsessed with it. And I heard about this UFL, and I thought, let me talk to somebody in the UFL. I mean, it's insane. So my agent got me on the phone with Dwayne Johnson.
So you went straight up the flagpole.
I went straight up to, and he called me. And we had a conversation.
Did he know what you were asking for?
No, he didn't know. No,
okay.
He was nice enough to call back. And so we had this conversation. I pitched him my no goalpost idea. And I thought thought it was going to happen. He was completely into it.
So, again, your idea is to remove the goalposts entirely
Yes,
from the
remove
football
goalposts.
field. Okay.
Yeah, that was the idea.
And so you pitched him, like, how did that sound? I mean...
what I said to you on the show, there's no reason for him. Yeah. Suppose there was a baseball game and there were two parallel bars in deep center field that were 12 feet apart, and you could get a guy off the bench to hit a fungo, and if he got through the bars, you'd get a run. I mean, what's the point? It has nothing to do with the game, you know? So right. I told him all that, and then I pitched my extra point. I didn't know that the extra point was already in the XFL,
mm-hmm.
that there were no extra points from kicks, right?
Yes, correct.
That it was just, so I pitched him like 2 yard line from 1 point, 4 yard line for 2 points.
An actual regular run play, a run or a pass play from the 2 yard line.
Yeah.
Would get you 1 point.
Yes.
And then, isn't that what they're doing?
That's what they're doing. Yeah.
Is this from you?
I don't think it's from me. I think it was in the XFL.
Okay. But maybe he might have been, how about this? He was on the fence. You spoke. And he's like, you know what, Larry makes a lot of sense.
Rich, I got to tell you, if there's one thing I could accomplish in my life, if I could get rid of these goalposts, I will die a happy man. That will give me more pleasure than anything.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
You could wave a wand. This is what your accomplishment would be.
Yes, because I don't have a better idea for any other sport.
For any other sport?
For any other sport, I don't have a better idea.
Huh.
Yeah.
Nothing in baseball, nothing in basketball, 4-point shot, nothing.
Basketball.
What do you got there?
I think I'd like to get rid of foul shooting.
So what happens when somebody gets fouled in the act of shooting?
You get the foul and you take it out. You take it out.
Okay. Yeah. Why do free throw shooting is is it too boring? It slows the game down?
It completely, yes. Uh-huh. It slows the game down for no reason. Like, foul shot, I'm turning it off. Why do I want to watch these foul shots? They're so boring and they're so frequent. What's going on?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Doesn't anybody see what I see? I don't know. Is it me?
Well, here's an interesting thing.
One shot.
Here's an interesting thing from the world of basketball. I don't know if you're aware. Did you?
By the way, if I knew I was going to bring up the foul shot thing today,
yes, yeah,
I would have given it a little more thought. This is off the top of my head.
Understood.
Yeah.
It's not completely.
It's not completely thought out.
Okay.
It's a little half-baked. But my point is, it slows the game down. I don't like it. Something's got to be done.
They used to have a rule, and Larry should remember this because he's older than I am. There used to be a rule that when you were over the limit, you had 3 to make 2. Yeah, that was probably in effect until the mid-'70s, maybe later. And you'd have free throw shooters up there. Some of them weren't very good, and they'd miss all 3, and it would take forever. And so they've changed that. I don't know, I don't think that that's really an issue. And there's an advantage, especially if you're a big man, you can hit free throws. And I think that if you look at, big men in pro basketball and for that matter in college basketball, Zach Edey, he makes his free throws. That's a huge thing. That's why I think he might have an opportunity to play in the NBA. If Shaquille O'Neal ever mastered free throw shooting, oh boy. Wilt Chamberlain, famously a terrible free throw shooter, but on the night that he scored 100 points, I think he hit 23 of 28, something like that. So he was good that night. But by and large, he was a bad free throw shooter. Not that he had any trouble scoring points, especially that season that he averaged 50, including that 100-point game. But it makes you even more dangerous inside. So I don't know. I don't think you could ever get rid of free throw shooting. And as he said, it probably wasn't as thought out as well as his idea to get rid of kicking. Does not want to have kicking. But it's not what he says, it's how he says it. And that's what makes him as successful as he is. He's funny. He knows how to be funny. Coming up, 35 years ago today, the most powerful man in sports pulled a stunner and said, I'm retiring. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Mike Callow is in for Tony at 11 o'clock today. 35 years ago today, Pete Rozelle at the owners' meeting pulled a shocker and said, "Hey, guys, it's been fun, but I'm retiring." He'd been on the job for almost 30 years, but he was only 63 years old. He was the boy commissioner when he took over after the death of Bert Bell in October of 1959, a kind of a surprise candidate, being so young, but he had done a really good job as general manager of the Rams. And the NFL wasn't what the NFL would become under Pete Rozelle. There were 12 teams. They had a 12-game schedule. Stadiums were half empty. And most importantly, only about half the teams had television contracts. One of them was the Washington Redskins, who were an all-white team with George Preston Marshall, A, a racist, and B, a capitalist. And his network extended through the South because there was no team south of Washington. The Atlanta Falcons had not come in. There were no teams in Florida, anything like that. So he had the South to himself, and he thought he'd get better television ratings, too, if he had an all-white team. He had an all-white team that stunk, a team that went 112-1 in 1961, but he was about, promoting himself and promoting his wallet, and that's what he did. So Pete Rozelle, over the course of his tenure, changed the face of the league really through television, and we'll get to that. But he had come up interesting way. He'd grown up in California, served some time in the Navy, went to junior college. He became the PR director at the University of San Francisco in 1948, and that helped him to get to the Rams, where he ran their PR department, worked with a guy by the name of Tex Schramm, who later took over the Cowboys. They were great friends throughout their lives. And so Rozelle comes in, and he knows from a business standpoint that he's got to change things. And over the course of those 29 years that he was commissioner, he saw the league grow from 12 teams to 28. The huge television deals, which included the creation of Monday Night Football in 1970. Maybe his biggest move was the merger, 1970, the AFL and the NFL, and the creation of the Super Bowl, and the rest, as they say, is history. He was still commissioner when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1985, 4 years before his retirement. The money, and you got to laugh at this when you hear Roger Goodell is reportedly making $60 million a year. His early salary, got a 5-year contract at $50,000 a year. He was granted a $10,000 bonus for 1961, and his annual salary was increased by $10,000 to $60,000. So in 1961-62, he was making $60,000 a year. Roger Goodell makes $60 million a year, and the main reason for that is what Goodell, never confuse those names, what Rozelle did for television. Now, a year after he retired, and he was replaced by Paul Tagliabue, who had been a longtime legal counsel for the NFL. But a year after he retired, Rozelle sat down for a lengthy interview and was asked what he was most proud of during his tenure.
I was proud of not just what I did, what my staff played obviously a major part in, did in popularizing the sport with the early promotional activities of NFL properties, merchandising, NFL films, all the work that we put on the Super Bowl to make that a top attraction. All those things I feel very, very good about. I think they played a big part in popularizing the league. I know that, what was the line on the Super Bowl? Someone once wrote, obviously facetiously, but said, if Jesus Christ were alive today, he would be attending the Super Bowl. And they say it tongue-in-cheek, but it really is a tribute to the awesomeness of the one-day attraction.
Yeah, that was in 1990, so that's 30 over 30 years ago, and he's still understood how big it was then, and I think if he saw how big it has become, maybe it wouldn't even surprise him. The worst decision that he ever made, and he said this right after he retired, the worst decision he ever made was the weekend of November 22nd of 1963. John F. Kennedy was killed on a Friday in Dallas. Games were scheduled on Sunday, and Rozelle, who created the television contract a year before, probably should have had a better understanding of this because they weren't even able to televise these games because of all the news coverage of the Kennedy assassination and ultimately what happened with Lee Harvey Oswald as he was shot by Jack Ruby. They were wall-to-wall television coverage all day Sunday. You couldn't show any of the NFL games that were going on. There were 14 games that were played, and nobody saw them because unless you were in the stadium. And Rozelle, a year after retiring, said that, in fact, was his biggest regret.
Our teams were traveling at the time of President Kennedy's assassination. And I remember trying to get Pierre Salinger, who was then President Kennedy's press secretary. And he was traveling down with some cabinet members to Tokyo. I tried to reach him. And he finally called me back from Hawaii on the way back. And I asked him, what can we do in these? We don't know when the service is going to be. We don't know the day of mourning and so forth. This is a Friday afternoon. And so he told me that he thought, I should go ahead and, as long as the teams were on the road, should play the games. And it was my decision, but I did check with Pierre, and he's off the top of his head why he thought maybe we should play the games. And I think it was a mistake because it was such a horrendous thing that the follow-up on Lee Harvey Oswald and so forth was just absorbed the nation, put them in a deep state of mourning. And we had teams that had gone to different cities ready for a game on Sunday. So we did play the games that Sunday. And I think it was a serious public relations mistake. I think it was much better if we hadn't, of course. I was criticized intensely for that.
Yeah, and it did say that it was the biggest mistake. And players to this day, some of whom played in the game, said it was an absolute mistake to play the game. The biggest thing that he did, and this is why the league is what it is, and other sports for that matter as well. As I mentioned, when he took over in 1959, only about half the teams had television contracts. There was no national television contract. And he went to Wellington Mara, who was the owner of the Giants, the number one media market in the country. And he said, we're going to make a deal with television so that everybody shares equally in the rights. And even though you are the number one market, we want you to agree that you're going to get the same amount of money for television that the Green Bay Packers get in market, whatever it is, 175 or whatever. And Wellington Mara agreed to that. And they had a deal where everybody shared equally in the revenue. That kept teams from, like the Packers, from moving because they could survive in Green Bay with a television deal like that, and things stayed relatively stable. And this is Rozelle discussing some of the good, but also he mentioned some of the bad of the television. Remember, this is before free agencies, before owners had to open the books and share the revenue. And he views television kind of as a double-edged sword in the success of the league.
Particularly with the money they pay. That's what's caused football as well as other sports a lot of trouble with their labor relations, because highly publicized television contracts create a wish on the part of the players to get some of it, maybe too much of it sometimes. And that's been a major factor. Some people don't like instant replay. We felt that there's going to be a reaction. You're going to have instant replay whether you have a rule to change a play or not, because by having it, just showing it on television, which they would, why people would see whether a play was called, in some cases, correctly or incorrectly. So we decided that for that reason we should show it. We should use it, rather, for evaluating the way the plays are called. I think for the most part it's had a very healthy reaction on football. When you look at the money it's brought in the game and the promotion, the popularity it's brought about, it's awfully hard to say that it's a dragon.
No, it's the best thing that ever happened to the sport, and in fact, the sport is a television show now. That's what it is. Stadiums, the revenue is relatively insignificant compared to the television, and that's what Pete Rozelle gave to the league. And the instant replay that he was talking about there in 1990, it actually went away. It went away after the 91 season. Yeah, 91. And then came back in 1998 for good. But they had used it the first time the season before in 1988. And Pete Rozelle presided over that, the merger of the leagues, Monday Night Football. I mean, he was absolutely remarkable. Sadly, he only had 7 years of retirement. He died in December of 1996 at the age of 70, died of a brain tumor. And the woman that he married, his second wife, his first wife was an alcoholic. They had a daughter, Anne Marie, born in 1958, and he had full custody of the daughter after the divorce because of his wife's alcoholism. His second wife was Carrie. Her name was Carrie. Her married name, she'd been divorced, was Carrie Cook because she had been married to Ralph Kent Cook, she was the former daughter-in-law of Jack Kent Cook. And then she would die some years later of a brain tumor as well. But in terms of what Pete Rozelle did as commissioner, what he did for the NFL, what he did for sports, it cannot be overstated. And to see a boob like Roger Goodell running this league now, just a thug, he benefited so much from the groundwork that was laid by Pete Rozelle. Now, maybe television and football were going to have this great marriage anyway, but it was Rozelle that was always forward-thinking, always thinking ahead, and understanding what television would mean to the NFL, and that's why it's the most popular sport in the world right now. All right, or in America anyway. Soccer, you can make your arguments, but certainly in the United States. Anyway, that's a wrap for me. Enjoy the tournament this weekend. Mike Callow is in for Tony next, and I'll see you back here Monday morning at 9 a.m.